This is a CBS News special report. I'm Carissa Lawson. President Trump will speak soon from the White House after shots were fired at the White House Correspondents Dinner. The president, vice president, and members of the cabinet were all rushed out of the room and are safe. The suspected shooter is in custody. Let's bring in White House producer and reporter Olivia Rinaldi right now to tell us exactly what else happened. The chaos tonight, Olivia.
Carissa, it's good to be with you. This evening, we were inside the ballroom at the Washington Hilton. I was seated at the back of the room. We were near the entrance where people were funneling in. We had just sat down for dinner, conversation was flowing, and then all of a sudden we heard what sounded like 3 to 4 successive shots. Originally, it sounded like plates had fallen, loud noises, but I was there in Butler. That was gunfire, and we knew it. We jot down, got on the ground, got under the table as everyone was gathered underneath there. We could also smell the gunpowder that was fired. We sat under there what felt like a lifetime, but was really about 20 to 30 seconds, maybe about a minute, until we were able to get up. We heard agents yelling. They were going into the kitchen to try to figure out where these shots were coming from, to try to clear the area. We know that there were kitchen staff that were in there that were held at gunpoint, that held their hands up to signal that they were not a threat as Secret Service was trying to secure the area. Then what happened, I saw Steve Scalise, who is the House Majority Leader. He was ushered out. Of course, he was the subject of his own assassination attempt back in 2017. He was ushered out, as were other members of the cabinet, including the Defense Secretary, the Energy Secretary, the Interior Secretary. Up on the dais, we saw the president, the first lady, his press secretary, and the vice president all be ushered out, along with our own Weijia Zhang, who was sitting right there. All of them were taken out. After a while, it was just a bit of unsure feeling in that ballroom. We weren't sure what actually happened, as everything happened so quickly. Then shortly after, the Secret Service told us to leave the area. So some of us started leaving. I left through a galley kitchen with other members of the press. Once we were out on the street, we then walked as far as we could, got into an Uber with some of our colleagues who drove by, and then tried to make it to our bureau in downtown Washington. Nearly every single street that we passed was shut down because President Trump was still at that ballroom, and there were questions about whether or not he would continue, whether he would go on. On Truth Social, he wrote, "It was quite an evening. D.C. law enforcement and Secret Service acted quickly and bravely." He said the shooter was apprehended. He recommended that the show go on, but he said that would be entirely guided by law enforcement. Some members of our staff, including Ed O'Keefe, as well as other members of the press, waited there in that ballroom. Ultimately, though, Secret Service said it is not safe. They got the president back to the White House, where the president said that he would be giving a press conference in 30 minutes. That was a True Social he posted a little bit ago. So you can see right there the press briefing podium. We are waiting to hear from the president. Members of his staff are there. I can see them in the press briefing podium, press briefing room, trying to put the presidential seal on the podium, which signifies that the president is going to speak. I also want to point out, in that press briefing room right there, our own Weijia Zhang, going right from the White House Correspondents Dinner to the front row there at the press briefing room to talk to the president about what happened tonight. So that's where we are right now. We are waiting to hear from the president. We have reporting from our own Nicole Skanga and Richard Escobedo that one of the rounds that were fired actually hit a Secret Service agent in his bulletproof vest. We are told the agent is expected to be okay, but this was a significant and scary event tonight at the Washington Hilton, where the president was set to address reporters tonight in the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
Olivia, you were there, and I also want to bring in correspondent Natalie Brand. She was also at the dinner tonight. And Natalie, what did you see from your perspective?
I was seated at a table right next to Olivia. So we were in the back, right next to the door where these gunshots could be heard. Boom, boom, boom. At first, like Olivia said, it didn't sound like a gunshot, maybe perhaps a platter crashing to the floor, plates crashing. My colleague sitting next to me, Torian Small, realized right away what this was, the gravity of the situation. He threw us basically to the floor. We all crawled under tables, colleagues huddled together, huddled, hugging, praying that we would all be safe. And thankfully, we were inside that room. Then there was some confusion and chaos. Some people saying that we should evacuate, others that we should stay. We ended up leaving. This may have had to do with the president wanting the show to go on, but then noting that it was up to his Secret Service to assess the situation. Obviously, thousands of people were there. We all went through security. Our purses were checked. We went through the mags like you would at a major event or a campaign rally. But the difference is there were just so many people, the volume of people. It felt like it didn't take too terribly long to get through security. And obviously, given what's happened, this type of situation sadly was on our minds that this could be a possibility. Thankfully, we made it out.
Were there protesters outside of the building as you were all going inside, Natalie?
There were. There was a small group of protesters, maybe a dozen or so. In past years, it seemed like the demonstrations have been larger, so it wasn't completely out of the ordinary. We were quickly escorted in. Obviously, we sensed that security would be extremely tight. There would be a perimeter around the hotel, the property, given that the president was going to be in attendance tonight.